Okay, now I'm starting with a sketch that I did from a mirror. So I have a mirror here and I've been looking at that, and I'm drawing a nice loose sketch based on my own portrait. And I could go back and erase some of the grid lines. I'm just gonna keep them there for the sake of time, but the idea that the grid lines are here even though you see them lightly. Where do you shade? The first thing I like to do is work in the eyes, and so I would use radiating lines kind of going around the pupil of the eye, leaving an area of the, remember that white shine, that little bit of glow. I do have a lighter color eye, and so I'm going to make the area around the eye a little bit darker, keeping a nice area of that highlight. And so here I go and I start darkening in radial lines around my eye, keeping my eye around the iris a little bit darker like it is in real life. I have like green, blue eyes. Next is, because I'm a woman, I like to darken that a little bit of that top eyelid, and I could add just a few eyelashes. And so you want to curve kind of away from the eye with your eyelashes. I don't have like press on fake eyelashes, so I'm just gonna do a few, showing you and reminding you that the eyelashes grow away from the face. Areas that are darker, so notice I'm holding my pencil on the edge. I'm using parallel lines. I'm trying not to loop too much and to pick up my pencil in between, and I'm going to begin with light shading. I'm going to start around my eye, in the corner of my eye, because I know that that is a little bit deeper. We talked about that in relation to the skull. And so those eye sockets and those areas in between the nose are nice and deep. And you can turn your paper versus turning your arm, and so that you're drawing your shading in the direction of the way in which the shading will go. And so I do have a little bit of shading onto that brow bone area. I might slightly darken the crease line of my top lid, darkening a little bit of the corner of the crease line, and then darkening a little bit on the outer corner, a little bit of the inner corner, a little bit of the outer corner, showing a little bit of that line that caught light in the Caravaggio painting right there. And I'm going to start to go down my nose a little bit. I want to try to like eliminate some of those outlines. So I put a line that symbolized the edge of the nose. Now I'm going to slowly fade it away, making my lines look like they're going down a plane. Realize that there's very little on your face that is white of the paper. Everything has a little bit of a tone. And so if we think back to our skull, remember how it had that little triangular shape that looked like an upside down heart? And because of that, the area right in between the eyes is just a little bit darker, which keeps the area above that brow bone a little bit lighter. One thing about the eye, like we learned before, is that an eyelid casts a shadow onto the white of the eye. And so to make sure that the white of the eye is not like totally white, it's a little bit, those eyelashes actually cast a shadow onto the white of the eye. And then now we're going to go, and now I could keep on going, but we don't want this video to last the 2 hours I want to spend on the drawing. And so I'm just going to start to place where some of the shading goes. I particularly have a darker area around my nostril that shows this crease of my cheeks that kind of line up to the corners of my mouth that on my face is pretty deep. And then underneath my chin, my nose is a little bit darker to show that the tip of my nose is the highest point, separating a little bit my nostrils, shading them a little bit so they set back. And I'm trying to eliminate some of those strong lines. Notice I haven't even erased yet. No erasing needed. Here's my little tear duct here. And I'm not gonna focus too much on the details. A little bit of shading of my nose, casting a shadow onto my top lip. And then there's that little shape there, that's the top lip that's under the nose. I'm gonna add a little bit of shading around my lip, thinking about my lip being colored. I don't have lipstick on. I haven't worn lipstick since the pandemic because it gets on my mask. And so my lips are a little bit more pale, but that's okay. Men, if you're drawing men, they're a little bit lighter because they often don't use, you know, any makeup or lipstick or gloss, so to speak. And so your top lip is always a little bit darker because it curves in so that it has a little bit of lightness in the middle and a little bit of darkness on your seam. That shows the difference between the two lips. And then your bottom lip is always a little lighter. So your bottom lip will maybe have a little bit of the paper or your lightest value, different from your top lip, which is in shadow because it kind of tucks into the inside of your mouth. So maybe just a little bit of shading. Sometimes I make my lines on my lip show those creases of wrinkle skin just a little bit. As I move further down, my chin goes in here a little bit, so I'm gonna add a little bit of shading around the corner of my chin, knowing that the chin itself, the middle of the chin, is going to be lighter. The middle of the chin catches light and is a little bit lighter. The sides of my face have a plane that goes down, so I'm gonna make kind of straight shading going down. And then the area of my cheekbones are lighter. So I'm gonna keep that the white of the paper like I did a little bit for the crease of the nose and a little bit for the center of my chin. Now, I have wrinkles, I have bags under my eyes. I'm gonna make it a little bit of a glamour shot because, you know, people don't always want things to look exactly like they look like because they always want it to look a little bit better. And so your temples are always darker a little bit, and that accentuates your cheekbones. So what I'm doing is I'm just trying to tone the paper. I'm just toning it down, showing shading in a variety of directions, leaving a little bit of the white of the paper exposed, because that's my dimple right here, and I have another one right here. My hair there is nice and dark, so to get that highlight on the side of my face, I'm gonna darken around my face. Even though my hair is light, I have more blondish, unfortunately for now, gray, but little blondish hair. The area around your face is always a little bit darker with your hair. And so I'll go a little bit on this side, and notice how I'm moving my arm around so that the shading lines can follow the shape of your actual face itself. Your forehead is rounded, so I'm gonna make it a little bit darker on the edges and make it lighter in the middle, because that's where it hits light, like right here. And so using the side of my pencil, not the tip, I can then create some nice soft shading. People like to shade with their finger and like blend that way. I recommend that you not do that, only because your hands have natural oils on them and can like leave a little smudge on your face, and you kind of want to use pressure and directional lines versus blending with your finger. So the more pencil lead you add, the smoother your shading is going to be. Sometimes when you add shading, it looks out of place. You're like, oh my God, it looks so dark there. Well, lots of times it's because you haven't shaded the rest of it. And so that piece in isolation might have a little bit of darkness, but don't worry. Once you finish your whole face, it's really going to, as they say, come together. You know what I mean? So, you know, adding a little bit of darkness under the nose, you're like, oh, that looks wrong, until they're shading around the rest of the face, and then you're like, oh, you're right, that looks right. And so as I go, I don't make it the darkest in the beginning. I kind of build it up all over time. And then your eyebrows. When doing your eyebrows, they are hairs. So draw them by pressing down and lifting up and drawing them as individual hairs, and never like a back and forth scribble, and make the hairs like go away from the eye. Away. Trying to do them at the same time so that they look symmetrical. Like I said before, eyebrows can make people look very distinctly like them, whether they have a slight arc, whether they are very angled and defined, or whether they're like really soft and natural looking. And so you want to try to like match them, and that will give a little bit more of the distinct look of a particular person. And then lastly, as I'm gonna kind of go through, I really want to make sure that my neck is considerably darker than my face, because my chin is casting a shadow onto my neck. And so my neck will appear further back. And now notice how I'm getting the edge of my cheek to come forward. I'm getting the shading of my hair and my chin to go right up against that edge. I'm gonna change my body position so I can get the shape I want. And again, I'm trying to go a little bit quickly. This, I want you to spend a little bit more time, but you know, this video would take forever if I did like a full, complete drawing of what I wanted you to do. Okay, so the idea of just memorizing where shading goes. And where does it go? And I'm gonna darken it all right now so you can see those dark, rich values. The darker you get the dark areas, the more realistic it's actually going to look. So what I have here are dark in the temples, a little bit darker going across the nose because that is, it indents and it's like a little bit of that bridge. Darkness on the sides of the forehead to make it look three-dimensional and rounder. Darker under the nose, maybe even casting a light shadow on the top lip from the nose. Remember, shadows are soft, edges are sharp. Speaking of sharp edges, my nostrils have very sharp edges. A little bit of the whole of the nostril. A whole of the nostril has a sharp edge on the top and a soft edge on the bottom, because the top part is the edge of the nose and the bottom part is a shadow. And so I'm darkening those areas because I'm a little bit older, well, a lot of bit older than you, so I have a little bit more grooves in my face as I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm constantly referencing my face. And my top lip is darker, my bottom lip is lighter, my chin is rather rounded. I have what's called a heart-faced shaped face. And then next is the hair, knowing that I can go back and add and change as much as I can on these drawings, but just to get the basic idea and the basic feeling of where you go about to shade. And when we start to create these nice edges, we have an outline there. We want to blend that into the hair. So I have darkness around my face and it's in my hair, and the line doesn't belong to my face, it belongs to the shape around my face. And so when you start drawing, like I have curls, so when you start drawing these, thinking about lines and shapes that come across, and then I added just a few little lines that symbolize the outfit that I have on. So I'm not just a floating head. You do not want a floating head. And so I'm not gonna do too much of the hair, but I wanted you to see I didn't even erase the grid lines. You can kind of see some of them still there. And I started to go with what I know to be true. What I know to be true is areas that are the lightest: forehead, eyelids, tops of the cheeks, top of the nose, top of the lip, and the chin. Medium tones, sides of the face that come down, sides of the forehead that wrap around, the bones of the top of the eye sockets, the sides of the nose to make the nose look like it has soft edges and are standing out, the areas around the chin to make your chin look rounded, and certainly that whole bottom of your neck that can really get those areas to get tone. You know, if you want to go back with an eraser, you can lighten areas. And for some people, you could use a tortillon or a blending stomp to get those soft gradients. But for me, I'm going to stick with just using line work and a pencil with no eraser. And so I'm going to stop it here, work a little bit more on my hair, and then show you a picture at the end.